Good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, Julie Kelly joins us at 4 o'clock. We'll talk about the left's latest election interference, trying to silence a candidate for president who just wants to talk about his campaign to become president. Itamar Marcus will be with us at 4:30 today. He's the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch. We'll get into the latest here about how the Palestinian Authority has played a role in advancing all of this terrorism against Israel. Itamar's got a good perspective on that. And then Congressman Pat Fallon joins us at 5 o'clock today. In the midst of all of this chaos, who's going to become the next Speaker of the House? You surely know by now there has been a round of voting today on that subject, and Jim Jordan fell short. He didn't get the votes he needed. So more votes expected later today. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, we want to. I'll spend a lot of time getting into the specifics of the Jim Jordan campaign here, and the people who are voting against him for some reason. And we should know a little bit more as soon as they get back to voting in the hours ahead about whether or not Jim Jordan will pick up the needed votes to get across the finish line. There is no alternative yet. Nobody's put his name in the ring to say, hey, I'm the guy. And so right now, the people who are not voting for Jordan, they're just protest votes. You know, Kevin McCarthy said, I'm for Jordan, and I'm voting for Jordan. So isn't that good enough for the people who wish Kevin McCarthy was still the Speaker of the House? Steve Scalise supporting Jordan. And so we've got some holdouts left. We'll talk about that in the hours ahead. First, though, I want to talk about a developing story. If you were listening to the Dan Bongino program in the last few minutes, you may have heard him relay some of this. There is a story coming to us now out of Gaza, and I'll just read an example story on this subject. This is from Reuters. They claim at least 300 are dead. At least 300 are dead. I've seen estimates as much as 500 and more right now. And things, again, this is a developing story, so everything's flying very quickly, and typically, especially with an event like this, it's impossible to get the actual facts right away. But they say at least 300 are dead in a Gaza hospital bombing, local authorities say. Now, here's how the Reuters piece begins. Dateline Gaza, an Israeli airstrike killed at least 300 people at a Gaza City hospital on Tuesday. Authorities in the Palestinian enclave said, and the United Nations said an Israeli strike also hit one of its schools being used as a shelter. That's the whole lead sentence. The Israelis are striking schools and hospitals, say the United Nations and Hamas. The authorities in the Palestinian enclave are Hamas. That's what they're referencing. And one, as we contemplate this, as we process this in these early hours, it's worth remembering that that Hamas uses hospitals and schools for terrorism staging areas, for their military equipment, and for their operations, specifically to try and inflict casualties amongst the civilian population when Israel seeks to defend itself. So this is part of their strategy in fighting Israel and trying to wipe it off the map. But there is plenty of reason at this hour to believe that it may not have been Israel at all who struck a hospital today. Reuters continues, a Gaza civil defense chief said on Al Jazeera television that more than 300 people were killed at Al-Ali Al-Arabi Hospital. A Gaza health ministry source said at least 500 people were killed. Both departments are under the Hamas-run government. Israel's military said it was still, quote, ironing out all the details on the reports of the strikes on both the hospital and the school. All right, so that's the Reuters coverage of all of this. Meanwhile, over on CNN, they're doing the same thing. They're blaming Israel right out the gate. The headline on their piece as of this moment, and all of this could change. You may want to save the podcast here because it might be the only place you find the record of this. Israel hits hospital and school in Gaza as blockade cripples healthcare system, says CNN. This was just in the last 20 minutes. Lead sentence. A school and a hospital in Gaza were among the civilian refuges lethally blasted during Israeli airstrikes on Tuesday, as humanitarian concerns mount over ongoing deprivation of food, fuel, and electricity to the isolated population. Hundreds are thought to have died in the strike on Al-Ali Baptist Hospital in the middle of Gaza, which was sheltering thousands of displaced people, the Palestinian Health Ministry said in a statement. Many victims are still under the rubble, it added. The Israeli Defense Forces are looking at the hospital attack, spokesperson Daniel Hagari said, adding that it was unclear if the cause was an IDF strike or a failed Hamas launch. I'm sorry. Wait a second. The headline on this CNN piece is Israel hits hospital. Did you hear that part? That's the CNN headline. Israel hits hospital. Just 3 paragraphs down in that very story, they say that the IDF is saying to CNN that it is unclear if the cause was actually an IDF strike or it was a failed Hamas launch. So you can't write that headline. That headline's a lie. You don't have the evidence to support it. You have conflicting information inside the body of the piece. You can't write that headline. Israel strikes hospital. Now, in the end, it may very well be that an Israeli strike hit the hospital, either in an effort to go after some sort of military weaponry or by accident or any number of explanations. That may very well be the case. But you have Israeli media, you have the Israeli Defense Forces saying either that this was Hamas or they are looking into reports that Hamas did this. Now, of course, I wouldn't put it past Hamas to do this on purpose and then to turn it around and try and blame Israel for it. But there is video footage right now, as we speak, going around the internet, as video footage does. And again, can't vouch for its validity. All I can say is that a number of responsible people in this space are sharing it right now. And the video seems to show a missile that fired off from Gaza and then turned down and hit the hospital, that it didn't go very far. Additionally, Hamas was making claims that it was preparing to launch a barrage of missiles into Israel at the very moment that this occurred. And a number of missiles did fly in the direction of Israel. One hit the hospital. So is Hamas responsible for killing hundreds of civilians in a hospital? We don't know. We don't know. But neither does the legacy media here. Neither does the left-wing corporate media here. They're just making it up as they go on. They're already blaming Israel. They're saying Israel did this without the evidence to support it. And literally with information inside of the journalism that says it's not clear if this was Hamas or if this was Israel. Well, then how can you write in the headline, Israel hit the hospital? Isn't that dishonest? It's so fundamentally freaking dishonest. And you're watching it. I'm watching this play out in real time. We were ready to start on the speaker race today, and I'm sitting here all of a sudden seeing all these headlines of hundreds of people now dead in Gaza and Israel being blamed by the American media, lickety split. Reuters on top of it. CNN on top of it. Blame Israel, blame Israel. They say bodies are still under the rubble. We don't even know the specifics at this hour. But it follows the pattern we've seen all week, hasn't it? For a minute, almost in a check-the-box exercise, the media came along and said, isn't it horrible what Hamas just did to Israel? The raping, the kidnapping, the murder, the cold-blooded executions, shooting people in cars, hacking them up, destroying their bodies after they're already slain. That's what Hamas did. Thousands of people in Israel killed in that way. Hundreds taken hostage. And you can see it. I know you can detect it. You can smell it coming out of all these lefty news outlets. They're all starting to take Hamas's side. Or if they don't say it outright, though, we're rooting on Hamas. They're condemning Israel. They're saying, all right, Israel, that you've punched back. That's quite enough now. Stop shooting back at the people who just slaughtered your people. Stop it. That's enough. Ceasefire time. Ceasefire time. Telling Israel to do that. And then turning around and then blaming Israel for this strike on the hospital, again, without the information to support it. So that's what's happening right now. On this, and also speaking of Israel and what's happening with the Biden administration and the left, You see, they're sending Joe Biden to Israel tomorrow. He's headed there. They've decided, this is one of the craziest things. Biden is historically unpopular. He's not doing well as president of the United States. Nobody approves of him. They disapprove of him in literally every category that ABC News measured this week. We went over some of the survey results yesterday. It's horrible, horrible. 2/3 of the American public think that Joe Biden either did something illegal or unethical to enrich himself. In other words, 2/3 of the American people think Joe Biden is corrupt. 2/3 think he's corrupt. Some percentage of those people intend to vote for him again anyway. But he has no good stories to tell. He has no good stories to tell. I was just talking to some colleagues this morning. One of them pointed out, Joe Biden, to the extent that he can lay claim to the presidency, it's only by about 50,000 votes, right? He wins in the swing states. That really is what it came down to, just a 50,000 vote differential. And we could talk about all of the ways in which the left interfered and rigged all of our various systems, and including and especially our information delivery in the United States going into that election. But he wins by the narrowest of margins. And when he comes into office, what does he do? He instantly thinks that he's got a mandate. He's got a mandate to change the whole country. He's got a Barack Obama fundamentally transform America mandate. He is FDR reincarnated. And so he spends trillions of dollars out the gate. Immediately, he spends our families into poverty. Immediately, he kicks open what is left of our borders. Immediately, he allows drugs to flow in. Immediately. Pursues the Green New Deal, the destruction of American energy, on and on and on. All Biden had to do to be a successful president and to be on track for a re-election, all he had to do was nothing. All Joe Biden would literally have to do to have a successful presidency is to take the country that Donald Trump had left him and not screw with it, right? Nothing. Nothing. If he had an entire presidency of doing nothing, we'd be in a better position now than we are. He should spend all of it in Delaware, doing literally nothing. Riding his bicycle, falling off of it, practicing on stairs. That would be a better situation for us right now than the way Joe Biden has governed this presidency. All he had to do was nothing, and he can't even do that right. He can't do nothing right. And so what are they doing this week? So all of a sudden, Israel gets attacked by Hamas. And for a fleeting second, the White House's position is, we got to stand up for Israel. We should stand up for Israel. Israel's our most important ally in the Middle East. We should stand up for them, on and on and on, right? And now you've got a hair-on-fire lunatic left that is cheering on Hamas on college campuses, out in front of the White House, blockading the entrances to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Hamas, Hamas, free Palestine from the river to the sea, get rid of Israel, down with the Jews, gas the Jews, they were saying in Australia. The left is insane, and it's all on display. And so Biden's trying to figure out, how do we navigate this? And more importantly, Biden has no idea what he's thinking. So somebody else is thinking, how do we navigate this? How do we support Israel and have this huge base that supports Hamas? What do we do? And the answer to that question is, they don't know what to do. They think that they should say they support Israel. They should send Joe Biden out there to say he supports Israel. I'm here to support Israel. Simultaneously trying to stop Israel from defending itself, urging it to back off. Don't go after Hamas. Ceasefire, please. They don't know what to do. But you don't send the old man out there unless you think this is the best possible campaign strategy you have at the moment. Because they've got nothing. They've got nothing else to run on. His corruption, obvious. The economy, in the crapper. The immigration problem has never been worse, no matter how much you try and spin it. And so they're looking for a foreign policy Hail Mary. What if he goes to Israel? What if we send him to Israel? Maybe that'll work. Maybe that'll be a sufficient distraction from how crappy everything is back home. Doubt it. I don't think that's going to work. And my sense is that Biden is only turning off more and more people, more sensible people, who are looking at this going, this is not what I signed up for. This is not... We keep hearing from Jewish Democrats. They keep saying the same thing. Oh, this is not what I signed up for. the destruction of Israel, rooting on Hamas. The left, I don't even recognize these people. Yeah. Well, break free. They're insane. Like I said, CNN, among the outlets at this hour, reporting, Israel struck a hospital in Gaza, killing hundreds. Meanwhile, on the air, they're handling it, I think, a little bit differently. I don't know. Everything's so schizophrenic right now. Here's Jake Tapper a short while ago.
A major story developing right now in Gaza, what the Palestinian government is calling a war crime. The government in Gaza says the Israeli Defense Forces struck a hospital in the center of Gaza City, Al-Ali Baptist Hospital. Preliminary estimates from the government in Gaza put the number of killed in the strike somewhere between 200 and 300. We expect there are many more innocent people still trapped under the rubble. The IDF says they're looking into reports of the incident and remains unclear to them right now, they say, if the hospital was struck by Israeli warplanes or by a failed Hamas rocket launch.
Okay, so Tapper comes in. That report is here's what Hamas is claiming, and here's what Israel is claiming. Now, who's more trustworthy? Just as a basic credibility check, who's more trustworthy, the Israeli government or Hamas? Would you say? The Israelis are not the butchers. They're not the rapists and the kidnappers. They're defending themselves here. I think this is a close call. But additionally, the difference here is Tapper is saying, okay, there's a he said situation going on here. This is what we're learning. It sounds like people are dead. All right, that's the on-the-air presentation. But on their website, the headline is Israel hits hospital. How could you even do that? You can't, actually. This is one of the rules of journalism, not allowed to lie. So in other words, this is not journalism. It's just making it up. Well, Israel's the bad guy, obviously. So they hit the hospital. Coming up, we're going to be speaking with so many great guests, to include Julie Kelly. She's at the top of the hour. And we'll go over what's up with Jim Jordan. Will he become the next Speaker of the House? Or is he too, as the New York Times says today, ultra-conservative for that job? Good afternoon to you. 3:34 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, top of the hour, the great, incomparable Julie Kelly will be with us. We'll talk about the effort to silence the man who I'm pretty sure can't be silenced, Donald Trump. But the government is trying its best to shut him up as he campaigns for president. Itamar Marcus will be with us at 4:30. He's the founder of Palestinian Media Watch. We'll talk about his group's findings about how the Palestinian Authority actually paid fees. They paid, ransom payments of a sort. They put out the hit on these Israeli citizens killed last week. And then Pat Fallon, the congressman, will be with us at 5 o'clock on a busy day for the U.S. House. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. And I'll just add one last thing on what's going on with the media right now in Israel. It's not just CNN. It's all over the place at the moment. Places like Reuters, the Associated Press, even the Wall Street Journal. A lot of credulity towards the Hamas perspective on everything that went down. So we'll see. We'll see what actually happened. The truth could be that Israel struck a hospital, but just how credulous the media is being right now is out of control, and they don't even have the facts to support it. Mike's calling in from Gainesville. He's on line 3. Mike, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Happy Tuesday. Good to talk to you.
Likewise, Mike. Thank you.
We have a carrier group very nearby. It would be dereliction of duty not to have overhead persistent surveillance going on over Gaza by our carrier group, or at least our intelligence agencies. The Israelis have overhead persistent surveillance over Gaza 24/7. Mm-hmm. So the idea that this attack on the hospital hasn't been documented by both countries on camera is ludicrous. So obviously we are either withholding that information for the moment or don't want to talk about it. And the other tactic is the Israelis, when they attack something with a missile, generally give you a heads up. In an evacuation zone, they give you a double tap.
Yes.
They explode something on the roof first.
Yeah, no, it was not. It's been the case all this past week that Israel's been warning civilians in affected areas that they do need to clear the area. And there's been, and even Israeli officials who've been on TV and on radio in the last hour or so, they've been saying it is not the policy of the IDF to strike hospitals. We do not do that. So, again, I think you're right, though. I think your first point, Mike, is excellent, which is that, this persistent surveillance you reference, it's absolutely going on. And at a level right now, you have to believe that is way above and beyond what Israel's normally doing, keeping an eye on Gaza. In the wake of that terror attack, they clearly have been spending a tremendous amount of time surveying the battlefield, trying to assess where their hostages are, how they get in, how they can minimize casualties, how they can take out leaders of Hamas. So there's got to be all sorts of audio, video, data available to draw upon in order to figure out how the hell this happened in the first place.
Yeah, so it'll take a week or more before we'll find out what actually happened, and by then there'll be all kinds of other atrocities that have taken place. So we're behind the curve on getting this story straightened out before something else terrible is going to happen, I think.
Yeah, and it only happened here in the last few hours, but it's the lies get out there really quick. Mike, thank you very much, as always. Thank you for your call today. Let's see here. We've got Howard calling in from Nashville, Tennessee, line 1. Howard, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Appreciate your time. The reason I'm calling is concerning a Market Watch article dated October 11th by someone by the name of Weston Blasey. It's entitled, "We Know That Egypt Had Warned the Israelis 3 days prior, House Republican Says of Hamas Attack." And this is supposedly Michael McCall, House Foreign Affairs Committee, had made this statement. And I'm wondering why I haven't heard anything about this. It's from 6 days ago, and it really raises a lot of concern.
Yeah, there's a lot. So it's a good question. One, I know our buddy Mark Levin, whose show comes up next. He's been talking about this at some great length on his program, and apparently it's a very contested claim that Egypt did warn Israel of the attack, and clearly, as we look backwards on this and the effort to try and prevent terror attacks in the future, it seems kind of critical you figure out what the intelligence failures were that allowed so many terrorists to cross the border and to start slaughtering Israeli civilians. That seems like a really important point. But at the same time, Howard, to this point, Israel is denying this. Their national security advisor, I can't pronounce his name, but denied that this ever occurred. He said it was, quote, utterly fake that they received an Egyptian warning of an attack by Hamas. So for now, there's a bit of there's conflicting information on whether or not that's the case. Either way, we've got to find out. The global community, especially the United States, Israel, seems important that we get to the bottom of this.
Well, the fact of the matter is, it would take one call from somebody like you to call up Michael McCall and say, "Hey, did you say this?"
He did. He said it on television, I think.
Okay, so Michael McCall said that. Okay, so we do have proof that Michael McCall, the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, made this statement.
Yes,
I would say that was concerning. I mean, wouldn't this be like an FDR, Pearl Harbor, gee, I didn't know, but I knew moment?
Yeah, it seems important. I agree with you, Howard. It seems really important that we get the answer to this. He did, by the way, he told CNN this. He said, quote, "We know the Egyptian intelligence service handed this off days before the terrorist invasion, if you will, or attack." So there's lots of questions about that, he said. So he made a kind of a broad claim, but he didn't make a definitive one about what Egyptian intelligence knew.
Okay, yeah, because I would figure it would be a very important point. Think about it. If they knew, what does that say about all of this? You had a $6 billion payment to the Iranians,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken, by the Biden administration, and then magically, out of nowhere, you get Hamas attacking Israel. But in the interim, you've got Egypt saying, "Hey, Israel, hey, watch your back," 3 days in advance of something happening. That sounds, if it's all true,
Yeah.
that sounds like a problem to me. I mean, I don't see why everybody isn't jumping up and down with their hair on fire saying what's really going on.
Well, we also don't know how specific any warning Egypt may or may not have gave Israel would be. The idea was, be prepared for something big. It could be happening soon. That's the way that it was apparently said by an Egyptian intelligence official who spoke to the Associated Press about that. That's not exactly the most specific thing, but would certainly put Israelis on high alert for whatever might be coming. The other piece here, the other piece here is that if Israel, let's say Israel had a detailed assessment, Howard, and knew that this was coming and with specificity, it's going to happen on this date or it's going to happen within this window. I can't envision a scenario in my entire life where Israel would let that happen to them, the slaughtering of thousands of civilians. So that's why that this story about Egypt giving them a warning, it sounds a lot more complicated than kind of the simplistic representation we've seen in the press.
Well, according to this article, and I'm quoting here, we know that Egypt had warned the Israelis. This is Representative McCall speaking. We know that Egypt had warned the Israelis 3 days prior that an event like this could happen. McCall, a Republican from Texas, said, we know that this has been planned perhaps as long as a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the time McCall said all that, Howard, I believe the reporting from the Wall Street Journal was already out, making this claim that Iran was coordinating this very planning with Hamas and Hezbollah by the beginning of that week.
Yeah. See, this is all very concerning, and not enough people are really talking about this, in my humble opinion. With as many people as they report to have been killed, and all the atrocities. And put it this way, if you're one of the premier intelligence agencies, the Israeli intelligence agency, you would think that a music festival or any big festival like that would have agents swarming all over it. You would figure that there would be some sort of protection. I mean, that's just their history.
And they were setting ducks.
And they were. And see, none of this makes any sense. I'm hearing people ask the question, well, how could they have missed it? I mean, they're the best on the planet.
Right.
How could they miss it?
Right.
And U.S., how could they miss it? Well, I guess the answer is they didn't.
Meaning what?
They didn't miss it.
Meaning what?
Meaning 3 days in advance, they had a clue that Egypt told them.
But Howard, that would make the point that I was just making a moment ago, which is I think is an impossible point, that Israel let it happen.
Well, is it impossible that FDR let the attack on Pearl Harbor happen? I'm just asking the question. I'm not making any accusations. I'm just asking.
Well, you're better versed in that history than I am, because I just don't see Israel allowing it under any circumstance, the slaughter of their own civilians. The whole point is to protect them. But that's just.
I would have to agree. It is their job to protect them. But it begs the question: if in fact you are told and you do nothing about it, then what's going on? I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, which is why I think the common sense assessment here, and Howard, thank you for the call. I appreciate you bringing this up, because it is an important point. How do we figure out what happened here, and how do we prevent it from happening again? And especially for the Israelis, I imagine that they very desperately want to do that. But the common sense explanation here is that there is a perfectly good explanation to be found, and not one that involves Israel rooting for the destruction of its own people. That's like that conclusion is too insane for me. Is much too insane. All right. Let's see here. I do want to get to what's going on with the speaker race. Jim Jordan has failed on the first ballot to become Speaker of the House, and this is and was the expected outcome. There is no surprise in that. 20 Republicans voted against Jim Jordan today, 20 of them. He needs 217 votes in the current House. The math on this, just to be specific, is that in a House where normally you'd have 435 members, at the moment you have 433 current members. In order to become Speaker of the House, you just need to win a majority. You need to win a majority of the votes in the 50 plus 1. So what that means, if you divide 433 directly in half, you get 216.5. In other words, 217 is the number, the magic number to become Speaker of the House. And that would be mitigated in part by people voting present or people voting absent. Those are excluded from the vote. But so as far as you're concerned, as you're seeing all of this come past you, what you're really looking for is 217 votes. That's how you get there. That's how you get there. Today, Jim Jordan did not get there. Not yet, anyway. The House immediately recessed after this vote concluded. According to Politico here in their write-up, Jordan's office vowed that another ballot would take place later today, Tuesday. The House needs a speaker as soon as possible. Expect another round of votes today. It's time for Republicans to come together, said Russell Dye. He's a spokesman for Jordan. The pause is going to allow Jordan to meet, as he has been since the vote today, with some of the 20 Republican holdouts to try and bring them into his camp before voting again. Recessing before continuing on to a second ballot will allow sorely divided Republicans to regroup in private away from the House floor and potentially consider their strategy. Many Jordan allies have predicted it would take multiple ballots, but it is unclear if they'll be able to flip enough holdouts in subsequent votes. And it's possible Jordan could lose rather than gain support, Politico claims. Representative David Joyce of Ohio, who eventually voted for Jordan on the first ballot, didn't commit to backing him on a second one. Quote, I need to have some discussion with him, because the tactics that were used against some members were something he and I had discussions about all weekend. Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, brother to, is that Jose Diaz-Balart? Yeah, Jose Diaz-Balart's brother, the MSNBC host, right? He says, quote, I have no intention of moving. I've been transparent from the start. The Republicans who bucked Jordan are largely in three categories. Those in vulnerable districts, defense hawks with concerns about military spending, and appropriators wary of Jordan's history of voting against spending bills. So people who are upset that Jordan doesn't vote to spend your child into poverty are against him. Man. 7 voted for Majority Leader Steve Scalise. He's not even running. He dropped his bid. 6 voted for Speaker Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker, who voted for Jordan. And various others voted for Tom Emmer, the Majority Whip, and a bunch of other names as well. But among these 20, they voted for all these guys. Now, it's funny. There is audio here. Do I have this on my cut sheet, or is it off to the side? This is the audio of Ken Buck explaining why he supported Tom Emmer. Okay, good. I've got it over here. Why he supported Tom Emmer today. He went on television. He was asked about this. Why did you vote for Tom Emmer? Is it because you really like Tom Emmer? And listen to his answer. Ken Buck says, no, I don't like Tom Emmer. I don't like him, says Ken Buck. Well, then why'd you vote for him?
Oh, he did not vote for Congressman Jim Jordan, instead voting for Tom Emmer. Well, I guess my first question is, do you really want Tom Emmer to be Speaker?
No, I don't. I don't like Tom Emmer. I figured this would be the worst job in America. Mike Rowe would not want to do this for his TV show. This is a terrible job.
Okay, so just to underscore that, you voted for somebody because you don't like them.
I voted for somebody because I wasn't going to vote for Jim Jordan.
What? No, I don't. I don't like Tom Emmer, says Ken Buck. The man who just voted for him. What a phony baloney thing. So why'd you vote for him? So this is supposed to make you look good, and who? Jim Jordan look bad? Matt Gaetz? What's the frame here? What are you trying to do? I don't like Tom Emmer, so I voted for him. You don't even make any sense. Meanwhile, the Democrats are not only voting in unison, they're chanting in unison. It's a cult. You should hear their behavior today on the House floor. It's really remarkable. It's 3:51 now. Yeah, the Democrats today in unison chanting about how awful Jim Jordan is. Jim Jordan's the worst. This is the ridiculous Democrats today. And they're basically, you don't want to talk about getting in lockstep. Republicans don't do that, but boy, Democrats really, really do. Get in lockstep together, chanting that he's bad. Here is Pete Aguilar, Democrat, today.
His words speak for themselves. When New Yorkers recovering from Hurricane Sandy needed Congress to act, he said no.
He said no.
When wildfires ravaged the West, destroying homes and businesses, and those residents needed disaster assistance, He said no.
Here they go.
When the Mississippi River floods devastated the South and communities across state lines
It's like a refrain on a church hymn.
needed Congress to act, he said no. When our veterans were suffering from disease
Wouldn't you be embarrassed to be such an obedient little moron?
and dying as a result of their service to our country, and Congress passed a bipartisan solution, he said no.
On and on and on. By the way, an update for you. The IDF has now released a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces, saying that they have done an analysis of what went down at the hospital today in Gaza. They said a barrage of rockets was fired by the terrorists in Gaza, passing in close proximity to the Al-Ali hospital at the time it was hit. Intelligence from multiple sources we have in our hands indicates that Islamic Jihad is responsible for the failed rocket launch which hit the hospital in Gaza. Much more credible source on this subject than Hamas would be. The media immediately blamed Israel, of course. More details ahead, whatever they might be. And Julie Kelly is just around the corner.